Hi everybody, and welcome to our Positive Playtime party. I'm really excited that you're here. I'm delighted that we have our speakers too. So to get us started, because we're in party mode, and I'm just really excited to be sharing with you my 101 Playground Games book with you today. It just arrived on Monday, so I'm just really thrilled that I get to share that with you. And also, what we'd really like to start by doing is get you to share a game that you love in the chat. Some of you are on Twitter, some of you are on Facebook, some of you are on YouTube. So wherever you are, if you can share your favorite playground game, then we'd be delighted. We've been sharing them over social media the last few days, and it's just been amazing for people to track back in terms of games that they used to love when they were children. So it's those your favorite playground games from that you used to play when you were a child. And a lot of nostalgia gets created when we think back to our favorite playground games. And I know people I've been talking to, they keep smiling every time they think about a game. So Richard, could we share our first slides, please? Thank you. So we've also got a hashtag today, and that's Play Matters 2021, because we know play really does matter, particularly after the year that we've all had. And I'm really delighted to share with you as well some wonderful speakers who've actually volunteered their time to come and speak with us today. So I've got Helen Dodd, Professor of Child Psychology at the University of Reading, and Dr. Rachel Nesbitt, postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Reading too. And I'm really delighted that you're both here today, because I've been watching a lot of your work and speaking to Rachel about your amazing work around play and its impact on anxiety, and how it actually supports children with not being anxious. So I'm really excited to hear what you're going to share with us. And I've also got Maria here, Maria Brosnan, who's founder of Pursuit of Wellbeing. She's an educational leadership wellbeing specialist, author, coach, and speaker. Maria used to be founder, I know she's sold her business now, but of Striver, a PE and wellbeing program for schools. So Maria's got a wealth of background in terms of PE and wellbeing. So delighted that you're here with us today. And thank you everybody who's turned up today. Really pleased that you've been able to make it, and that we can share all that we know about play with you today. So just move on to our next slide. So I've got one of my favorite quotes, and one that's in the book, is children have a full-time occupation. It's called play. Let them be occupied by it from their early years until their twilight years. What I notice in terms of my work in education is that children just love to play. If we ask a group of children what they want to do, and when they're at school, you know, what's their favorite thing, they'll say playing with their friends. And I know how with my daughter when she was young, if she had a bad playtime, then very often she wouldn't actually want to go to school the following day. When I dug a little bit deeper, you know, she'd be having tummy aches and not feeling very well. I'd say to her, no, what is it? What's happened? And I'd find out that actually maybe she'd fallen out with a friend, or something had happened in the playground. It meant that actually she didn't want to go to school. So it is about us thinking about the playground and playtime, making it a happy place for all children. Often as well on training programs I run in school, lunchtime supervisors, I'm encouraging them to go outside and play games. And just before lockdown, I was working with a school, and there was a deputy head in the training I was running, and I said, oh, we're going to go outside and we're going to play some games. And she looked at me like, oh goodness, do I really have to go outside and play some games? And often I do get that look from people when I suggest playing, particularly adults, when I suggest playing games. I don't get it from children, but I do get it from adults. And so we went outside, we played a whole host of games from my book, and she came back in and her face was alight. She said, I've just had the best time. I remembered all the games from my childhood. And that's very often what games do. They bring joy, they bring happiness, and they're active. And what we want for our children right now is for them to be active in the playgrounds, running around and having fun. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit to me and why I wrote the book too. So my background's in early years as a teacher, and when I did my training many years ago, I spent a lot of time learning about the value of play. And in my early years of teaching, I worked in South London in a primary school called Honeywell, and have many happy memories of that time there. But one of the things I used to find was when I was teaching and after playtime, I'd have a line of children queuing up saying that this has happened to me, that's happened to me. They'd had various playtime problems. They've got hurt. And often I would spend really good teaching and learning time in the playground, in the classroom, resolving problems. So I talked to my head teacher at the time and said, you know, we really do need to do something about this because children are coming back really unhappy or they've had accidents. So I spent some time doing some research in the playground and looking at what was working and what wasn't working, and started to play games with the children. And what I found was that when I started a game, I'd end up with almost all the children in the playground playing with me. So the more I played games, the more I realized that children were really thirsty to play games. And what I also realized at that time was that children actually often didn't know the games that I used to play. So it's got me thinking, and I thought, you know, actually I have a really important role here to actually, if these children don't learn the games I used to play, then those games won't get passed down to the next generation. So I feel that if we teach these games, then we leave a legacy. And that's my huge thing about playing games, is that actually we get to leave a legacy and the next generation gets to learn and play those games. And it's really, really vital. So I wanted to also share with you another reason why I want for everybody to be playing games and enjoying games. Not only is it fun, but there's another deeper reason. It's because actually children spend 20% of their time in the playground at lunch times and in usually their small break in the morning. So a few years ago, I was writing, well, it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was writing an article for a magazine. And I started breaking down the percentage of time that children spent playing. And actually I was really quite shocked, because actually they spend 1/5 of their school day in the playground. So if we break that down, that's actually 1 day a week that they spend playing. So what I encourage you to do in terms of the 20% rule is actually support children with having happy, healthy, harmonious, active play times where everybody's included. And that 20% rule is also really important, thinking about school improvement, and thinking about having it in your school development plan, making play a focus. Because if it was 20% time spent with literacy or numeracy, we'd certainly be having a plan for it, and it'd be part of our strategic improvement. So let's really think about how we can bring play more into the curriculum in our schools. And we know that we really need it right now in terms of children's emotional and social and mental health and well-being. And I wanted to share with you some of the key benefits of play. So these are in my book too. They are for teamwork and camaraderie. We know as well, in terms of increased physical health and well-being, increased emotional, mental health and well-being, as a stress reduction. I know Maria's going to be talking more about that as well, for fun and joy. And if nothing else, that's something that we want our children to be having more of now. Speaking very much with head teachers at the moment, they're often saying to me, well, actually, children have come back, they've been on tablets, they actually don't know how to play. And I don't know if that's what you're feeling right now and how it is in your playgrounds, but maybe you can share that in the chat too. You know, how are your children? Are they, going outside and running freely and really enjoying their playtimes? Or are some of them struggling socially? Because that's some of the feedback that I'm hearing as well. So we want all our children to be having a rich, enjoyable time. And part of that is just, encouraging you to remember the games that you used to love. I know lunchtime supervisors I often work with, they say to me, oh gosh, I completely forgot that game. And so I was actually up in Darlington yesterday, and some of them were sharing with me games that they used to play. And I was sharing a game which I'm going to play with you in a minute. Hopefully we can play and you'll be able to see me. But we're going to play a game in a second. So I wanted just to introduce you to some of the chapters from the book. So we've got traditional playground games, I've got tag games, circle games. I've spent a lot of time teaching circle times to schools over the last 25 years. And part of the circle time is actually children sit down in a circle and they play games. So I'm just, passionate about playing games inside and outside. Quiet games. Some children actually don't want to be playing wildly outside. There are some children who actually want to play quietly too. So it's thinking about what those games could be. Parachute games, we all love those. I know for myself when I was teaching, I often will be quite scared of the parachute because I think, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? So there's some games for those of you who maybe aren't quite sure how to use a parachute. And you can use those in your bubbles at the moment as well. Cooperative games, so making sure that everybody's included, and that's where your cooperative games come in. And I'll be playing a game called the Bean Game in a minute. And then chasing and catching games. One of the favourite games that children love to play and play at the playground is a game called Poison, which I actually learnt when I was living in New Zealand. And singing and dancing games, lots of those games there. So, and skipping games and rhymes. Many of you will remember those games with the long ropes that you used to play, all the short ropes. And it's actually, I was speaking to the school yesterday and just saying, so many children actually don't know the old skipping games and rhymes that we used to play. And actually, some of them know games that I don't know too. So what happens when we start up what I call a skipping craze, you get children coming with all sorts of games and rhymes that you probably won't know too. And actually, they're so inclusive of everybody when you've got a long rope. And I suggest you use it. You put the 10 skipping games in a pack, and you have a skipping craze for 1 week every 6 weeks. So that makes it fun and exciting for that week. Okay, so we're going to play the Bean Game. And what I'd like you to do is stand up. I don't know if my speakers can do that as well, but stand up wherever you are. And we're going to play this. The rules are, we've got different rules. So you can be different beans. So you can be a jelly bean, which is where you go like this, a bit jelly. A jumping bean, so you jump up and down. You can be a broad bean, where you're like this. String bean, like this. Chili bean, which is like this. Not very chilly today, but anyway, we can go do a little chili action. And the string bean. And Mexican bean, which is arriba, and French bean, which is bonjour. And I think that's enough. So let's all get going and playing. So let's all do runner bean, and broad bean, string bean, runner bean, jelly bean, frozen bean is where you just freeze, and French bean, bonjour, Mexican bean, arriba. Oh my goodness me. So I hope you've all had fun playing those games. So I wanted to, before we do that, just to share with you briefly, I'm sure you know this already, but just a quick reminder for those of you who don't know, that we've still got money, or we've got new money in our PE and Sports Premium. And to remind you that spending money on active play is now strongly encouraged by the DFE. So the Primary Sports Premium says schools should embed physical activity into the school day through encouraging active break times. And we should use the PE Premium to secure improvements in these key indicators. So engagement of all pupils in regular physical activity by providing targeted activities or support to involve and encourage the least active children, and encouraging active play during break times and lunch times. So please know that there is money there for you to invest in developing your playgrounds. And that's just really important. I know I'm a bit puffy now after playing that game. I wonder if you are too. Put it in the chat if you are. So that's interesting, isn't it? When we're playing games as well, it gets our heart racing and it improves our cardiovascular activity too. So of course it's good for our fitness. So there is a game called the Hokey Cokey, and some of you may remember it from when you were children. So it's another game in my book, and I was talking to an Australian friend of mine, And she was saying it's not called the hokey cokey, it's called the hokey pokey. So what you will find is that in different countries, games are called different things as well. So she said it's called the hokey pokey because you poke your hand in and you poke your hand out. So we're just going to play a little bit of this too. So if you can sing along with me, you can play it with me wherever you are. If you're with a group of other teachers, then have some fun. So remember, because we put our right hand in, our right hand out, in, out, shake it all about. We do the hokey cokey and we turn around. I'm going to have to stand up. That's what it's all about. And what we children tend to do is, and a lot of reasons we don't like to play this is because children want to they want to go in together and then come out, and it can get a bit rough. So what I encourage you to do is go, whoa, the hokey cokey, whoa, the hokey cokey, whoa, the hokey cokey, knees bent, arms stretched, rah, rah, rah. So it's almost time. So I'm going to finish there because I know we've got our other speakers to speak with. I've just got a couple more slides left to show. So I want to share with you that actually, if you haven't bought the book yet, that's absolutely fine. But you may want to get a free introduction to the book, which is the first 10 pages, which are the traditional playground games at the front of the book. So if you just want to try them out, you think, I'm interested in this book, but I'm not quite sure yet if I want to buy it, go and download them from my website, and let's see if you like them. And just as I'm finishing off, I just wanted to share a lovely quote. And yes, I am puffing again. It just shows I think I'm fit, but maybe I'm not as fit as I thought I was. A neighbour of the school approached, I think it's the heat as well. You might be finding that too. So a neighbour of the school approached me over the holidays. This is from a school I work with in New Zealand over an 18-month period. And it's from basically, it's a head teacher called Brent Caldwell. And I worked with this school for 18 months. And this is what one of the parents in the nearby houses said. He said, a neighbour of the school approached me over the holidays to say that she enjoys hearing the children out in the playground when she's in the garden. And he said, and she's out there a lot. But she said in the last 18 months, there's been a recognisable change in the sound of the children in the playground. She couldn't pinpoint it, but she said they sounded happy. And that's really, really interesting because you can go into playgrounds and you can hear the emotional tone of a playground, whether the children are happy or not. There is a definite sound. So I want to say thank you very much for listening to what I've been sharing today. And if you do want to buy my books, these are my other books. We've just got a new book coming out in November 2 called The Big Book of Whole School Wellbeing, which I'm co-editor and author on. And of course, my books are available on my website, and they're also available from Routledge, and you can get £5 off if you use the code, and we'll share that with you in a follow-up email. So thank you so much, everybody. What I would like to do now is to introduce my next guest, who is Maria Brosnan, and I'm delighted that we get to speak to Maria.
I definitely have to say it's the hokey pokey, Therese. It's Australia. I'm from Australia, so it's great to be here. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And firstly, huge congratulations to you for your beautiful book, Therese. I was reading it in preparing for this, and the part of it that really stood out for me was the first section where you talk about the benefits of play. And am I echoing, Richard? Tell me if I need to do anything differently. But it might be through Therese. So the benefits of the play are numerous, as Therese just shared. But the one that I really want to pick up on is how to help children de-stress, because you might be thinking, what do children need to de-stress from? But it might be something that's happening at home. It might be something happening in the classroom or in the playground. But whenever we experience a stressor of any kind, a stressful situation, we trigger the fight or flight stress response in our body. And this is a highly adaptive survival mechanism that helps to keep us safe. And when we do that, we produce a whole lot of chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol, but hundreds of others, and they're designed to help us to escape from threat. because no organism on Earth was designed to live in this fight or flight stress response for long. And so what would typically happen, we either complete that cycle, so we have a stressor of some kind, we have our reaction to it, and then we self-regulate. Something happens, we're soothed back into a state of homeostasis. But if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, we drop down out of that hyper vigilant, hyper arousal state down into the freeze response. And for many children and adults, of course, but that feels like complete collapse and shutdown, because we cannot keep the energy going of that kind of the fight or flight response. So we drop down into shutdown, or that state where we just can't, we collapse, we feel like what's the point, and we feel like giving up. And trauma is born in this freeze state. And Dr. Gabor Mate, some of you might be familiar with his wonderful work on trauma. And his definition of trauma is when bad things happen that shouldn't happen, like violence, like bullying, etc., or when good things that should be happening are not happening. So that might look like neglect, or a lack of care, a lack of food, perhaps children living in poverty. So that balance between bad things happening that shouldn't be happening, or good things that should be happening are just not happening. And these can either be acute, like a shock trauma, like an accident or something terrible happens that a child can't escape from, or it could be chronic or complex, ongoing developmental trauma that a child just cannot get away from. And this is typically something in the family, perhaps in the family home. But I want to share a story with you of a friend of mine that's a child psychotherapist in school, and she works in a number of schools in East London. And she was working typically one-to-one with children, and she started to see this pattern emerging by about year 5 or 6, where children just had given up on learning. They felt it was too hard. They felt that they couldn't do it. Something had happened to them. And so this just seemed to be increasing for her. So she decided to create a whole school program and help children understand what's happening in their brains, in their bodies, how they learn, how they make neural connections, and how learning is a process. It's not something that just happens. And she was so excited by the results that they were getting that she invited me to come down and observe. And this was just before lockdown. And so I went in to observe a class, a year 3 class. And she put up a GCSE maths problem on the board. And all of the children were sitting on the carpet. And there was this audible kind of, oh! And she said, "What's the matter? What's wrong?" And she said, and they went, "We don't know how to do that." And she said, "Has anybody taught you how to do this?" And they said, "No, but we should just know. We should know." And she said, "What would you normally do when Miss shares some work with you or shares a new thing with you and you don't know how to do it like this? What would you normally do?" And they're so sweet, year 3, they're so honest. And they said, "I'd pretend I needed to go to the toilet. I'd pretend that I knew it already, and I'd just act like I knew it, or I'd just stare out the window." And so looking at these fight, flight, or freeze responses, those children wanted to get out of there. And there was a chorus of approval when some of the braver ones spoke up and said they pretended that they needed to go to the toilet. They were like, "I do that too. I do that too." So I wanted to just invite you to consider, when work is too difficult for children, or when they're learning and they're finding it difficult, the one umbrella that sits over this that can really support them in any stressful situation that would stop it from turning from being a stressful situation into a trauma is signals of safety. Right? So if we can offer encouragement and help them feel that they're safe in there, and whether that's at home or whether that's in school, but the more we can offer children signals of safety, the more it reduces the potential for that to become a trauma. So I'd like to just share one slide, Richard, if I could, to show you what stress looks like in the brain and in the body. When we trigger stress, we have a very specific heart rhythm that looks something like this. It looks very chaotic. And when our heart is beating in that rhythm, when we're feeling anxiety or stress, etc., it sends a signal to the brain, which increases activity in the amygdala. And that is what triggers the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it takes a huge amount of energy to do that. all throughout the body, but especially in the brain. And it takes blood and glucose and oxygen away from the cortex, right? And that's the part of the brain where we think and learn and remember and all of those things that we want children to be doing all day long. Conversely, when we're feeling calm and safe and connected, our heart rhythm looks much more like this. And this is called coherence, a coherent heart rhythm. And that sends a signal to the brain to decrease the activity in the amygdala and to put the frontal cortex back online, where we can learn, where we can self-regulate, where we can emotionally regulate, where we can manage time, where we can think and recall and design and create, and all of those wonderful things that we want children to be doing all day long. So thank you, Richard. I'll stop that slide share. So what I'd like to share is 2 little things to put in your party bags to take away, how to help children self-regulate really quickly from that state of dysregulation and stress back to that coherent state where we can help them get their thinking brain back online. And I'll tell you 2 quick things. The first one is a breathing technique, and let's do it together. It's super quick, and I'll invite you even to keep your eyes open, because you can do this in the moment that it's happening. So we don't need to kind of sit quietly and shut our eyes and really calm ourselves that way. We can do these techniques in the moment that they're happening. So just feel your feet on the floor, just feel yourself grounded a little bit. And all I'd like to invite you to do is regular rhythmic breathing. So try breathing in through your nose to the count of 5 and out to the count of 5. So it doesn't really matter. It could be a little bit faster, a little bit slower, but as long as it's more or less the same going in and the same going out. All right, so breathing in to the count of 5 and breathing out to the count of 5. So we're just really slowing down our breath, making it nice and rhythmic and even as it goes in and out. And I want to make it a little bit deeper as well. So I'd like to invite you to pop your hand on your diaphragm, so just on the top of your belly up here. As you breathe in, just to push that hand out a little bit away from your spine. And as you breathe out, just bring that back in towards your spine. So can you feel the difference just to the other speakers and Therese? Can you just feel that difference as you're breathing in that way? It's such a simple thing to do, but what we're doing when we do that is changing our brain state. We're literally using a different part of our brain, and it's changing a whole lot of biochemistry that's happening in our body. So that's party bag number 1. Party bag number 2 is I'd really like to invite you to create or enhance your playground and play in your school, to create a safe and enjoyable and happy place for children to play, because play helps them to discharge any of those hormones of stress that might be still in their bodies after potentially a stressful morning. Helps them discharge that, and it helps them also just self-regulate. So I'd like to thank you all, wish you a happy rest of the party. Congratulations again to Therese, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. That's just so interesting. In fact, I think I probably could have done that at the very beginning of the exercise. And I know many teachers who will really welcome that, because so many teachers and lunchtime supervisors and head teachers I'm speaking to at the moment are really in need of structures and systems that they can use to really support themselves as well. But also, I think what's really interesting about that too is very often what I find in the playground is there's about 6 to 8 children who regularly don't cope with being in the playground.
Yeah.
And often I suggest to schools that we create a flourish group or a nurture group for those children, where actually they can go to a place which is safe, because actually often for them the playground has become this too big a space, and they don't actually know how to manage that huge space too. Exactly. So actually, that breathing technique will be a wonderful place for them to be. They're just there for a very short time, but it's a support system that helps them then go back into the playground and actually play harmoniously. And
exactly. And also, just one other quick point, Therese, when they come back in after a break or after lunch, if there has been some kind of little altercation or something difficult, just doing this for a minute or 2 as you bring your class back together is so settling. So I'll I'll leave that.
Actually, yeah, it's a brilliant idea. I know many teachers who will really appreciate that. And while we're on that little nugget, I'm going to just share another little nugget, which is something that's called tell a good tale. So very often when you do get those tales after playtime, children are learning that actually they're getting attention for those negative behaviours and things that happen at playtime. So I encourage teachers to also do, and for you to do who are listening today, whatever role you play, lunchtime supervisor, teacher, classroom teaching assistant, is tell the children before they go out to play, say to them before they go out to play, when you come back in, I want you to tell a good tale. So their focus on during lunchtime is on the good things that happen, not on the bad things. And then when they come back into the classroom after play, sit them on the mat in a circle and get them to hold a lovely, I've got a speaking object which I regularly use when I'm working in schools, get them to hold a little speaking object, and each child has a turn and says one good thing that happened to me at playtime was, and then you get lots of good news too. So releasing all those endorphins, all these wonderful strategies. I'm really delighted as well now. I'm going to so thank you, Maria. I really appreciate you contributing to this event. And I'm going to introduce now to Helen and Rachel, who I'm delighted to be speaking with us today. So Helen and Rachel are speaking about the importance of play for children's mental health and the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know so much of our audience is going to be really interested in this too, because it's been a huge time for everybody, particularly the children and the adults who've been there supporting them with homeschooling, etc. And the teachers, I was in school yesterday, and it's difficult. It's not easy in school at the moment with mask wearing, 2 metre distance, etc. It is tricky. So just a little bit about Helen and Rachel. Helen's a professor of child psychology at the University of Reading. She holds a UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship, which funds a programme of work examining the relationship between children's play and mental health. She has a specific expertise in child anxiety and the role of early risk factors in predicting anxiety over time in children. During the pandemic, Helen has contributed to the Play First UK campaign for schools to prioritise play. She's written a number of articles and blogs about children's play during the pandemic and is now campaigning for a summer of play, which we know is so important. And Rachel is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Reading, employed on the UKRI funded project examining the links between adventurous play and child anxiety. Her current research aims to understand the barriers and facilitators of adventurous play, with a goal to inform school-based interventions to increase the opportunity for and engagement in adventurous play in schools. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this adventurous play. And Rachel, and I know how important it is because I was talking about it yesterday with the school. So Rachel has a broad interest in developmental psychology, including in social cognition, play and mental health. So welcome to both of you, and I'm really excited that you're here, and I know our audience are, and we're delighted that you're going to get to speak. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for inviting us, and welcome to everyone that's joining today. We'd also like to congratulate Therese on her book, and we're really looking forward to looking at that in more depth. So today, as Therese said, we're going to be just talking a little bit about the importance of play for children's mental health and context-wise, and how this might be beneficial for recovery from the last 18 months we've had, so from the COVID-19 pandemic. So in terms of an outline, we want to try and cover 4 different things today. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of play in Britain, and we're going to draw upon some work from our recent British Children's Play Survey, which is the largest survey of play yet to date in Britain. And moving on from that, Helen is going to talk a bit about the importance of play for children's mental health, and specifically she's going to outline her model on adventurous play and how that might be a mechanism for reducing children's risk for anxiety. And Helen's then going to touch upon what we know about play during the pandemic. And then at the end, I'm going to draw this all together and give some insights into what we know about how the pandemic has impacted children's physical and mental health, as well as their social interactions, and why we feel that children need a summer of play. I'm going to share a bit more about the Summer of Play campaign and how you can hopefully get involved. So in terms of what we think of play, or what is play, so we're likely to all have quite different definitions of play. And we know that play is so important that it's recognised within the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child. And the definition I tend to favour is play is what children and young people do when they're not being told what to do. And we know that play can take place whenever and wherever these opportunities arise. And perhaps those of you with children or those of you that are supervising children are very much aware that children can sort of take it upon themselves to play wherever and whenever. So our team have recently published the British Children's Play Survey. And really what we wanted to do here was to characterise in Britain where are children playing, how much time they're spending playing, how adventurously they're playing, and what factors might be related to how much time they're playing. So what predicts the amount of time children spend playing. And we also asked about something called independent mobility. So this is the age at which children are allowed out alone without parent supervision. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about all of this with you today, but if you are interested in reading about this, the article is freely available online, and I will share that on Twitter afterwards. A quick note to say that this was a parental report measure of children's play, and as such, it doesn't account for play in schools. So where do children in Britain play? So our survey revealed that on average, children spend just over 3 hours a day playing, which is quite a lot of time, but if we could argue that this is more, considering we're not accounting for the amount of time children are spent playing in schools. And in terms of where children are playing, most play takes place at home, followed by gardens, so that's individual parents, so their garden or other people's gardens, and then the playground, green spaces, street, and then a little bit less in play centres and near water. And really this equates to around 9 hours inside at home a week, 5 hours outside at home, 2 hours at playground, in the street and in green spaces, and about an hour of play in play centres or near water. But what you might be wondering is, well, what factors are associated with how much time children spend play? And we did look at this, and I'm not going to speak about this a lot today because of time. And really the answer is that there are quite a few factors that predict play, but really they're not explaining a lot of what we call variance. So we know, for example, that children are playing less as they get older. Girls are typically playing a little bit more than boys. In terms of geographic factors, our work revealed that actually children in Scotland are playing a little bit more than other regions of the UK. And then also we were interested in parents' attitudes. So here we found that if parents had positive attitudes about risk and risk in play and tolerance of play, that they had children that were more likely to spend more time playing. So that's just a little bit of a summary so far about the Children's Play Survey. And yes, if you are interested, please do have a look at that paper. And for the sake of time, I'm going to pass on to Helen now, who's going to tell us why is this important? So why do we need to care about where children are playing or play altogether, and how is that related to children's mental health?
Fantastic, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so I'm going to take the next part, which is thinking about play and children's mental health. Can you go to the next slide, please, Rachel? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about free play, which is, as Rachel described, it's kind of what children do when we leave them to their own devices. So when children decide what they want to do, when they want to do it, when they want to start, when they want to stop. This type of play can be really beneficial for children for lots of reasons. Firstly, it's enjoyable because they're doing the thing that they want to do. But importantly, I think particularly thinking about recovery from the pandemic, it can help children regain a sense of control because they have the choice over what they play. So if you think about the past 15 months, children's lives and all of our lives have been so restricted, and we've had that control taken away from us because of rules and things that are decided by people we've never met often. So anything that can increase a child's sense of control at the moment, I think can be really beneficial. So letting them choose the game they want to play or the way they want to play or who they want to play with can be really helpful there. Children can also use this kind of play to help them make sense of things that are going on around them and to express how they're feeling about things. So sometimes you might be working with children who aren't very open about, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel scared. But when you play with those children, you can see that coming out in their play, and they use the play to communicate with you about how they're feeling. And in terms of making sense of things, you know, I'll give some examples in a little while, but
often children will use play to make sense of what's going on around them, the things that they're hearing and experiencing. And we've seen that in the pandemic, that children are bringing themes of the virus, social distancing, etc., into their play, because it helps them to just process what's going on in a way that we might if we sat down and had a conversation with a good friend or with a partner about, I'm feeling this, or I don't understand that, or what's that about. Children don't do that, but they can use play to help make sense of these things. And this kind of free play where we give children the opportunity to lead their play can be really great for supporting relationships as well, because it shows them that we trust them, that we allow them the space to lead, and that we're paying attention to what they're doing. So when they say, will you come and join in with me? Will you play this game with me? That you're interested and engaged and care about what they're doing enough to go along and say, yeah, brilliant, I'd love to join in with you. And that feels really different to the adult saying, this is what we're going to do now. So there are, of course, examples where it's really helpful for an adult to say, this is what we're going to do now, particularly if you've got 30 children and you're trying to teach them and you want them all to do a particular activity. But I think it's really great for us also to be thinking about how can we create these opportunities where the children are choosing and the children are leading what we're doing, and we join when we're invited to join. Rachel, can we go to the next slide? So we know from research, particularly thinking about children who are hospitalised, because when children are in hospital, their play is necessarily restricted and they're in stressful, anxiety-provoking situations. So lots of research has looked at how play can be beneficial for children when they're hospitalised. And it's quite clear from that research that when children are given time for free play, their stress decreases. And when they take part in these kind of free play interventions, they show lower levels of anxiety and fewer negative emotions, which really links to what Maria was saying about this kind of stress system, that play is a way of easing that. So it's reducing these bodily markers of stress and anxiety. And not only that, so we know that play is beneficial. Giving children opportunity to play freely in particular is beneficial for children's stress and anxiety. But being in nature and being outdoors are also beneficial for mental health, for children and for adults. So as a teacher, as a parent, if you're feeling anxious or you're struggling a bit with what's going on, getting outdoors and getting into nature will benefit you as well as children. So when we green play spaces, which is about taking perhaps, a big playground, which is just tarmac, and thinking about how can we make it green? So maybe we put a mud kitchen in so the kids can get dirty, or we plant some plants, or we put in a vegetable patch that the children can help look after. If we green these spaces and make them more natural, then we see changes in children's play and knock-on effects in terms of their physical and mental health. So these type of spaces encourage more complex and diverse types of play. They promote longer duration of play. They increase children's physical activity compared to a non-green, non-natural play space. And as we already talked about, when children then go back into the classroom, their attention is improved and their stress levels are decreased. So everybody benefits from these kind of more natural play spaces. So what I want to talk about very briefly is adventurous play, which is a particular type of play. We have recently published this model, which argues that adventurous play is crucial for helping children develop the expertise, the skills that they need to not become anxious. So if children have enough opportunity to play in an adventurous way, we can reduce children's risk for childhood anxiety. So again, I've got nowhere near enough time to go into any detail about this, but this paper is freely available. So if you just Google the title, then you'll be able to find it, and we can tweet the link to the paper again later. So why do we care about mental health? Why should we be thinking about it? Between 2004 and 2017, we saw a 49% increase in emotional disorders in 5 to 15-year-olds in England. And we know of those emotional disorders that anxiety disorders are the most common. Next slide. So if we're going to think early about children's mental health and about prevention of long-term mental health problems, then thinking about how we can create an environment around children, particularly thinking about school, which meets their needs and allows them to develop those kind of resilience skills is really important. And what we propose in our model is adventurous play, which is exciting and thrilling play, where the child experiences a level of fear. So we're not talking about that, heightened stress response that Maria talked about, but that low level kind of excitement, a little bit thrilling. They experience that, and they experience the heart racing and things that goes along with it. And they're taking these age appropriate risks, but they're led by them. If they play in that way, then they learn specific skills, which should help to prevent anxiety as they get older. Rachel. Okay, so this is what adventurous play looks like. These are photos of actual schools. This is a child jumping off and something that they've made, running through some tires. And you can see, look at their faces. These kids are having fun, right? They're enjoying this. This is a fun activity. Jumping off things, it's exciting, it's thrilling, and it gives them lots of opportunities to learn. So when children play in an adventurous way, they learn about coping. What can I cope with? What can't I cope with? And that allows them to build this kind of coping template that they can then carry with them. It decreases their intolerance to uncertainty because they're being exposed to uncertainty. And it lets them learn about these arousal feelings that Maria talked about, but in a positive context where they're having fun and they're enjoying themselves, so that those feelings themselves don't become something to be scared of. So what we argue is that adventurous play provides a positive context where children are motivated to engage in situations where they might experience some fear. And in doing so, that provides opportunities to learn about physiological arousal, about coping and uncertainty. These are just some quick quotes from children, just to show that they really enjoy doing this. I'll just read out one of them just for the sake of time. But so the middle one there, you feel excited because you're out of your comfort zone, but you're enjoying yourself. So it's that kind of right on the edge of your comfort zone where it's still fun, but it's a little bit scary too. Okay, so just very briefly thinking about play during the pandemic. So this survey that was done by the University of Limerick showed that during the first lockdown, this is based in Ireland, there were increases in screen time, unsurprisingly, and also increases in outdoor play. So children were actually playing a bit more during lockdown, particularly when we think about outdoor play. But of course, they weren't playing with their friends, and they weren't playing in that range of places that Rachel talked about earlier. And really interestingly, 1 in 3 children are reported to have brought the virus or restrictions into their play. And you can see these pictures here. These are my children who made up a game called Splat the Virus on the street outside our house. And they did it on the pavement so that other children could play, which I thought was really interesting. And these are some other examples of play during the pandemic. So I've been collecting an archive of children's play that's had the virus themes in it. So you can see on the left there, socially distanced toys, children making masks for dolls. And then on the right, these are children recreating their drive and their swimming lessons that they normally do on a Sunday. So as Therese mentioned, I've been part of the Play First UK campaign, and we've been arguing that in order for children to be ready to catch up academically, we really need to prioritise their mental health first. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that there's plenty of time for play. And so taking away lunchtime, taking away break time in order to do more academic catch up in the classroom is totally counterintuitive. That's not what children need right now. Okay, and then more recently, that same group, we've been asking for a summer of play, which Rachel will tell you a little bit more about now.
Thank you, Helen. So I'm going to talk a bit more about the summer of play, but just a little bit of context now for why we need a summer of play. So perhaps it's obvious. We know that play is good for children's mental health, but how has COVID impacted children's? How has it impacted children? So in terms of mental health, we know that in July 2020, a report by the NHS found that 1 in 6 5 to 16-year-olds now have a mental health problem. And perhaps quite alarmingly, this was a 50% increase since 2017. In terms of lockdown, so the CoSpace study is a large study that's been tracking children and young people's mental health throughout lockdown. So you can visit CoSpace website. But really what they found, is that lockdown was associated with increases in attentional, behavioural and emotional difficulties in young people. And if you look at this picture here, what we can see is that periods of lockdown here are associated with increases, and then as restrictions ease, symptoms are going down again. So we do see here that lockdown has had a negative effect on some children, maybe not all children's mental health. But lockdown and the pandemic has also had an impact on children's social interactions and physical activity. So what we can see, and this is consistent across lots of different research, is that children and young people are reported feeling lonely. So significant increases in the amount of children that are reporting loneliness. So I found this article online, and this was an interview with an 8-year-old boy on Newsround, and he said, well, not being able to play with my friends makes me feel really sad and lonely. And he also says that it's important for me to go outside and play with my friends because it makes me really happy. And I think this just goes to show how these social interactions that the children have been missing out on, that they really do need these and they really do want them. In terms of physical health, so Helen mentioned that study with Limerick that found that children played outdoors more. This survey from Youth Sport Trust found that actually parents reported that they were a bit concerned about their children's physical activity in the past year. So 78% of parents reported that their children was doing less physical activity, less than the recommended amount of physical activity, and 68% reported that their child's physical activity had decreased. If we look into this a bit more, what we can actually see is that the types of activities children engaging in have changed. So, for example, children might be more likely to go for a walk or go out on their bike, but less likely to do sort of organised sports and swimming and things like this, or dance classes. So bringing this together, so we know that children have the effects of lockdown have had an effect on children's mental health, their social interactions, and also their physical activity. So this has brought us to work with lots of different organisations. So Helen and I and Lily at University of Reading, alongside Anita Grant with Play England, Play Northern Ireland, Playboard Northern Ireland, Play Scotland, Play Wales and Playing Out, have been developing, and we've just launched the hashtag Summer of Play campaign. And what we really want to do here is use this as an opportunity to help children out of lockdown by supporting them in a summer of play. And we're asking organisations to take a pledge to enable all children in our community to have space and time to play this summer. And we want them to have fun. So we want to support children to have fun and express themselves through play. As Helen said, this is particularly important for children to make sense of their world around them. We want them to have an opportunity to be with their friends. So this is something that children have missed a lot throughout this past 18 months. And it's so important that we can support them to have opportunities to reconnect with those around them. And really importantly, we want them to have freedom. So we want to give children the space, the time and opportunities for free play. As Helen mentioned, children's lives have been directed a lot throughout the last 18 months. And it's really important now that children get this sense of control and freedom. And if you want to find out more about the Summer of Play campaign, you can visit the website on summerofplay.co.uk. So Helen and I very much support the Summer of Play, but we are not the only ones. So at the moment we have, last time I checked, there was over 160 organisations that are on board and have pledged to support a Summer of Play. And these include organisations such as the Lego Foundation, the NSPCC, and you can see the list there, the Greggs Foundation. And there's more information about how you can support children's play on our website. The Summer of Play website. And on that note, I'm going to end there and just thank you for listening and wish you all a summer of play with lots of fun, friends and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel and Helen. Just so interesting, and just, that active play for children right now is so important. It's really interesting you talking about that. Very often we have amazing wealth of outdoor play and active play in the early years, but it's not transferred into the playgrounds. And yesterday I was working with a school who I was basically went into it's a concrete jungle, really, I always call them, where it's just concrete. And I was looked at their early years spaces and they were absolutely outstanding. So if I'd been an early years teacher in those, I was, amazing practice. So what I was encouraging them to do was transfer the practice from early years out into the playground. And they were very, very much on board with that. What was also really interesting is very often in schools, when you're talking about active play and risk taking, So often we've got trees in playgrounds, and I remember when my daughter we lived in New Zealand, so there's much higher risk in New Zealand for children with playing. We're often overprotective in terms of our child's play in the UK, because often we're, in schools we're scared of health and safety, and often there's a kind of there are rules that are made up in schools where children aren't allowed to climb a tree, but actually nobody's actually said that they're not allowed to climb a tree. But it's just a kind of unspoken rule. And I know a few years ago I was working with some lunchtime supervisors who said, "Oh, the rule is children can't do gymnastics." And I was like, "Well, why can't they do gymnastics?" And I'm like, "Oh, they might get hurt." Well, actually, part of experiencing life is that there's a degree of risk too. So we really need to look at those kind of unconscious messages and that ability for children to actually be taking more risks in our playgrounds. And, when you talked about mud kitchens, that amazing outdoor active play is so important for our children. Now, I must stop talking because I do get very passionate on this subject too. And I want to do our live draw. So we've got a live draw with some amazing gifts and things that have been given to us and things that I'm giving to people. And so I've got a hat here, and I'm going to be picking names out of the hat. So first of all, I've got 5 signed copies of my book, which I'm giving away, and Rutledge are giving away. So the first name I've got out of I'm kind of saying I'm drawing out of the hat. I've got Cher Corley. So if you're there, we'll come to you and we will be sending you a copy of that book. And the second name I'm drawing out is Leslie Williams. So another person who's going to get a copy of my book. Third name is Jane Knight. Fourth name, let's see, put my hand in, go to the bottom, is... let's see, that is Gillian Hyam. And fifth name, let's see who we can get next, is Claire Palser. So congratulations, those books will be sent to you. Now I'm also giving away a free ticket to my Lunchtime Supervisor Superhero training, which is a public training I'm running on October the 7th at 9 o'clock. I think it's 9:15 in the morning. So let's see who we have here. Put the names in there. I have got Charlotte Taylor. You've got a free course if you can make it too, which would be wonderful to see you there. And I'm going to offer a 1-to-1 1-hour Zoom consultation for developing your playtimes and your lunch times. And the person who's won that is Kath Cohen. So congratulations, Kath. We'll be in touch with you about that. And Kimberly Evans and I've been talking about well-being and the need for staff to have something to support their well-being. So I've got a Nourish the Workplace Wellbeing Kit, because I know many of you need, could do with a bit of a boost to your own well-being at the moment. So I'm going to be giving that to Linda McBrien. So Linda, congratulations. You're going to have a little Nourish the Workplace Wellbeing Kit coming in the post to you. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So I want to say a huge thank you to you all for showing up today. I want to say a massive thank you to my speakers, Maria, Helen and Rachel, but to you for being here and for your passion for playtimes and lunchtimes. I know you've given up an hour of your time today to be here, and I just really, really appreciate that. And I also want to say a thank you to Rutledge Education, who published my book, and to everybody who's really supported me with writing this book too. And I think my mum's watching, so I just want to say hello, Mum. But yes, thank you so much. And my mother's been an amazing supporter of my work, and so I have to say thank you to her and all my family too. So because it takes a lot of time to write a book, so they've been very, very patient. Thank you. I know I've got lots of people from my newsletter list who are here and watching too, so thank you so much for showing up today. And I just also wanted to say, you can buy my book on my website, and you can also get it from Rutledge, and there is a discount code, so please get the 20% off with the discount code FLY21. So make sure you're not paying full price, really important. And just if you're still online, we're going to be clocking off any minute now, but my friend Karen Boyce put a message out on Facebook today. She's from New Zealand, and she's been a huge supporter of mine when I moved to New Zealand. I basically didn't know anybody, and I met with her. And when my book, I went to Rutledge to have it republished, it has to go through a process. And she was one of the people who had to read my proposal and basically sign off whether she, basically there was 3 or 4 people who read it, and then they had to agree that it was worth publishing again. So she's just put a little video together, which I saw on Facebook this morning, and she said she'd really like me to show it in our presentation today. So we're going to finish with that too. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. And thank you so much to you, all of you speakers too, Helen, Rachel and Maria. Thank you.
Hello, it's
Richard,
Karen
could you
Tui
show the
Boyce
video?
here, and I am excited because look what arrived in the mail. This is Therese Hoyle's new book, 101 Playground Games. It's the second edition. It is been revamped from the first. It is absolutely stunning, and so I wanted to share it with you. It has lots and lots of different ideas about how you can use playground games. Traditional games, tag games. What else have we got here? Skipping rhymes and rhythms. It's got parachute games. Oh, I love parachutes. The quiet games. Oh, that would be good, wouldn't it? Cooperative games. And it's each of them have beautiful instructions, tells you how long it's going to take, what you need, how to play. So it is absolutely fantastic. And you can get this at theresehoyle.com or rutledge.com. So if you want to grab a copy, but I'm excited because I know this is going to be a wonderful addition in a classroom for teachers. So congratulations, Therese. I want to shout out to you because I know this has been a big work of love for you to get this done. So well done and woohoo!